When I looked at my watch, it was past 8 p.m. My daughter and husband don't prepare meals themselves, so they must be waiting for my return. As I was about to enter the living room, I heard my daughter, Christina, laughing and talking loudly. Nowadays, fixing clothes and selling them again sounds so poor. I wonder if she is watching TV or something. I had no idea they were talking about me until I heard my husband Ben's next words, which made my blood run cold. Kathy is too, she's stubborn, or maybe she's got it all wrong. It seems they were talking about me and my friend Kathy. I froze on the spot, forced to listen to a conversation I did not want to hear. Their talk was full of belittling me, and Kathy made my head spin. As I collapsed on the spot, my dog Max cuddled up to me. Their conversation continued, with remarks about Max being a mutt, the old things, and even discussing throwing away my mother's old sewing machine. Suddenly, I stood up. Without saying a word, I took Max, and before I knew it, I had run out of the house. Where am I going? I don't even know myself. Max whimpered, looking vulnerable. Can I return home as if nothing had happened? No, I couldn't. I knew that those two were mocking us. I don't want to return to a home where such people were waiting. I don't want to feel so miserable. From that day, I never returned to that house. I have several things that are dear to me. One of them, my mother's treadle sewing machine, is my most treasured possession. My mother made many clothes for me with this sewing machine. And just like my mother, I wanted to make clothes for my daughter. Christina used to like the clothes I made for her, but that's a story of the past. Now that she's in high school, she hardly wears the clothes I tailor. In a cafe one afternoon, I was complaining to my friend Kathy. She used to say, "I love the clothes Mom makes the best." And now, seeing me use the sewing machine, she says I look like a grandmother. Well, Sandra, you used to say the same things at her age. Kathy and I have been friends since high school. Sometimes she brings up things I don't even remember. Was that so? Feigning forgetfulness, I took a sip of my iced coffee. Laughing, Kathy thoroughly checked the clothes I had mended. We graduated from a high school specializing in fashion and went on to the same university for fashion design. Though our paths are different now, we are still best friends. Yes. As expected, Sandra. Perfect. I felt relieved to hear Kathy say that. The vintage clothes I mended would be displayed in the select shop Kathy runs. After graduating from university, Kathy got a job at a major apparel company. There, she learned the tricks of trade and management before becoming independent. Christina is already in high school, Sandra. I really wish you could join me in this venture. After the delivery was done, it was Kathy's turn to complain. I tell you every time, what I do is just a hobby. I'm always nervous about whether I can do the repairs properly for you. Kathy replied nonchalantly. Yeah, I get it. After that, as usual, we caught up and chatted about life before parting ways. Walking alone on the way home, I thought about the past. High school, university days. Those days we were constantly challenged by assignments, striving to excel. After graduating, I joined a textile manufacturer, especially since I didn't make clothes so much anymore. My father passed away early, and I lived with my mother and daughter. My mother passed away just before I graduated from university. I was overwhelmed working alone in an unfamiliar environment. Years later, I married a senior colleague from the same company, and when Christina was born, I realized the importance of family anew. Just as my mother had done for me, I began making clothes for Christina using the treadle sewing machine she had left behind. I thought, she used to be so honest and cute when she was little. Arriving home, I saw Christina lying on the sofa in the living room, watching TV, and I sighed. Sandra used to say the same thing, remembering what Kathy had said during the day. Was I such a lazy daughter in my mother's eyes? If so, then my mother's love was indeed great, and I am nowhere near her. Huh? You're back? Christina finally noticed my return, but she didn't move from her sprawled position. I was sure I hadn't been such a lazy daughter. Reassuring myself, I decided to start preparing dinner. I'm home. My husband, Ben, arrived home after 10 p.m. He sat down next to Christina on the living room sofa and loosened his tie. Welcome back. Christina spoke up while fiddling with her smartphone. While I prepared for a drink, the two of them watched TV and talked happily. Although Ben and Christina get along well, they are not related by blood. Christina's biological father died in an accident when she was just 2 years old. After my first husband's death, Kathy helped me get sewing jobs, where I met Ben. Christina was a friendly child and quickly became attached to Ben, so it didn't take long for us to remarry. I used to be nervous about losing another important family member, but Ben's carefree nature and resilience gradually gave me a sense of security. This man wouldn't die easily. I felt, and sure enough, my happiness continues to this day. Oh. Isn't the dress that girl is wearing cute? Looking at the TV, Christina asked Ben about the outfit worn by a celebrity. This style is said to be trendy this year. My store has started stocking them too. Ben is the manager of a store known for budget-friendly apparel. Awesome. Buy it before it sells out. It was a trivial exchange between father and daughter, but I was fed up. It's fine for Ben and Christina to like brand new, trendy clothes. However, I can't understand their habit of discarding them as soon as the season changes. Clothes that could still be worn are quickly replaced by newer ones that catch their eye, despite having been favorites when purchased. I prefer to wear clothes I like for many years. If they get a bit old or start to unravel, I enjoy adding my own touches and mending them myself. I know that Ben and Christina think my way of handling clothes is outdated, so I try not to comment on their habits, but Christina really knows how to style herself. Ben is lenient with Christina, and at this rate, he'll end up buying her lots of clothes. Don't spoil her too much, Ben. Why doesn't Christina buy her clothes with money from her own part-time job? When I spoke up, the conversation suddenly stopped. Come on, it's no big deal. Parents should at least buy their kids clothes. That's right. Kids her age want to enjoy fashion. You should understand that. Suddenly, I was made out to be the villain by the two of them, and I was overwhelmed. Anything further I said would likely fall on deaf ears. Just keep it moderate, okay? Saying that, he left the living room, and the sounds of their cheerful voices followed him. I felt incredibly empty. However, seeing the sleeping face of my dog, Max, curled up in the bedroom soothed me. You're on my side, right? I muttered, but Max only tilted his head. With a renewed sense of emptiness, I lay down to sleep with Max. One day, I visited Kathy's office. She had sourced vintage clothes from overseas, and I was there to show her the repairs I had completed. Kathy scrutinized the clothes meticulously. She makes no compromises, even though we are friends. Knowing this, I approached the delivery with determination. Sometimes, when there are few items, we chat over coffee, but this time there were many, so I came to the office. There were cardboard boxes stacked everywhere. The first time I came, I mistook it for a warehouse. In the back was Kathy's desk, and in front of it, a table and chairs for visitors. All were chosen by Kathy from an antique shop. Her taste, which I've admired since our student days, hasn't changed. These are okay. Could you add a bit more flair to this skirt, though? After completing the rigorous inspection, I sighed in relief. Is something wrong? Kathy looked at me sharply. No, just a sigh of relief. I'll fix these up and contact you soon. I quickly packed the clothes to be resubmitted into my bag, escaping Kathy's piercing gaze. This batch wasn't quite up to your usual standards, Sandra. She took an envelope from her desk and handed it to me. It was the payment for the clothes I had repaired. I took longer this time and some items didn't meet expectations, so I can't accept this. I refused to take the envelope, but Kathy forced it into my hand. I think your skills haven't declined at all. She looked into my eyes with a sparkle. Far from it, you're at a professional level. That's why I've included a proper fee for your expertise. When Kathy's eyes sparkle, I know she's serious about her work. She recognizes my skills and provides fair compensation not just because we are friends. Oh. There's something I wanted you to see, Sandra. Ignoring my attempt to leave, Kathy pulled something out of a cardboard box. A hand-carved donkey, perhaps? It was a small figurine, the kind sold to tourists at stalls in Africa. When it comes to knickknacks, I think you have better taste, Sandra. What do you think about this? Well, I gave my honest opinion. And so, I evaluated each new piece of decor that came out. I loved these moments. Before I knew it, time had flown by. Glancing out the window, I realized it was already dark. Kathy. Sorry. I have to get going. Kathy looked up, surprised by the office clock. Sorry for keeping you so late. But your feedback was really helpful, thank you. With a wave, I hurried out of Kathy's office. I rushed through the city streets to the station in the night. Looking at the twinkling city lights, I felt a longing. And I remembered that I once had dreams too. I had wanted to see many people wearing the clothes I made, a dream that led me to a fashion college. Staring out the train window at the passing scenery, I wondered. What if I had joined an apparel company instead of a textile manufacturer? What if I hadn't married? What if I hadn't had a child? As my thoughts spiraled into self-pity, I arrived at the familiar residential area, returning to reality. Forgetting the dreams I had just reminisced about, I hurried home. When I checked my watch, it was past 8 p.m. Christina and Ben never prepare meals, so they must be waiting for me to return. Fortunately, they don't get angry when I put ready-made meals on the table, so I stop by the nearby supermarket to shop casually. Still, I'm concerned about the lack of any communication. Usually, I would have informed them if I were going to be late, or I would have called, but today there was neither. Moreover, it's the first time that I haven't prepared dinner and am coming home this late. By the time I reached home, the porch lights were on, so they must be inside. Maybe they don't mind that I'm not back yet, and I was the only one worried about the time. That thought is rather lonely. As I open the front door, I see Max tied up. Normally, he roams freely inside the house. Maybe they went for a walk and didn't let him loose afterward. As I reach for Max's leash to free him, I hear loud laughter coming from the living room. Unable to contain my irritation, I head towards the living room with Max. After all, Max is the dog I brought home. Christina wanted a dog, so we went to a city adoption event. Christina wanted a smaller and cuter dog, so we left, but I kept thinking about it. Unable to forget, I inquired later and learned that he was about to be put down, so I couldn't stand it and decided to adopt him. Though Max came to us this way, Christina and Ben were supposed to have accepted him as a pet. Yet now, to see them enjoying themselves while Max was left tied up in the cold entrance was unbearable. As I was about to enter the living room, I heard Christina laughing loudly. Nowadays, fixing clothes and selling them again sounds so poor. Maybe she is watching TV or something. I didn't think she was talking about me until I heard Ben's next words, which made my blood run cold. Kathy too, she's too stubborn, or maybe she's just mistaken about something. It seems they were talking about me and Kathy. I was frozen in place, forced to listen to a conversation I did not want to hear. Influenced by Kathy, I'm managing repairs without much skill. Kathy, taking advantage of me as a friend without a shred of sense. Their conversation was all about putting down me and Kathy, make me feel dizzy. Max cuddled up to me as I collapsed on the spot. Their conversation continued, talking about how Max is a mutt, the old stuff, and even considering throwing away my mother's sewing machine that I inherited. Suddenly, I stood up. Without saying a word, I took Max and, before I knew it, had left the house. Where am I going? I didn't even know myself. Whine. Max whimpered, looking vulnerable. Can I return home as if nothing had happened? No, I couldn't. I knew those two were mocking us. I don't want to return to a home where such people are waiting. I don't want to feel so miserable. My steps took me in the opposite direction from home. Eventually, the scenery changed from a residential area to an office district, and my figure walking with a dog stood out. But there was no turning back. When I arrived under the familiar buildings, I took out my smartphone and made a call. Sandra. What's up? Surprised by my call, Kathy hurried out of the building. Just as I was about to head home. She noticed Max sitting next to me and seemed to sense something. After asking me to wait a moment, Kathy disappeared back into the building. After a while, she reappeared holding a large cardboard box, saying, Max, can you bear it for a little while? Max, can you bear it for a little while? And put him inside the box. Max, being a quiet dog, quietly let it happen. Then I shared what had happened with Kathy in her office. So that happened? As I spoke, the shock and anger faded, and I began to feel uneasy, wondering if the two of them were worried about my absence. Ignoring my fretting, Kathy glanced at Max curled up in the cardboard box and murmured. If they were worried, they would have called. Still a bit panicked, I couldn't catch her words and kept pacing the room muttering, what should I do, what should I do? Didn't you say you had installed a pet camera for Max? I heard her this time, but Kathy's face looked exasperated. She sighed heavily, if you're worried about their state, why don't you check the camera? Without giving me another glance, she continued petting Max. I took out my smartphone to check the pet camera footage. But my hands were shaking, my heart pounding, and my mind went blank. Max, who had been comfortably petted by Kathy, suddenly ran to my feet. If you can't watch it alone, shall I help you? Nodding slightly, I handed her my smartphone. Kathy opened the pet camera app. The living room of our house appeared on the screen. A pizza box was open on the table, left in a mess. Next to it, on the sofa, Christina and Ben were still laughing joyfully. They clearly aren't worried about you. It was evident. They hadn't even noticed that Max and I had left the house. I was shocked again, but this time anger began to boil up again. So, what are you going to do now, Sandra? Do you still want to go back to that house? Kathy asked cheerily. No, I don't want to go back. Hearing my decision, Kathy smiled delightedly. Then leave it to me from here. Looking back, I've never felt as reliant on Kathy as I did at that moment. At the same time, I realized there might not be a more terrifying person if made an enemy. Just as I thought Kathy skillfully manipulated my smartphone, she showed me a shocking video. It was footage from the pet camera, but it captured Ben's affair. I can't believe it was this easy to find. Kathy seemed as excited as a child discovering a new game. She used to work at the same company as Ben and apparently still had connections there, through which she had heard rumors about Ben. It was just idle gossip, so I didn't think it was worth bothering you about, Sandra. Though her words were a harsh follow-up to the shocking video, they helped me come to a resolution. I've made up my mind. As if saying, that's the spirit. Kathy winked at me. The next day, I waited until Ben and Christina were out and moved my essential belongings out of the house. Christina sent a message on my phone, but I only told her I would be staying with Kathy for a while. The fact that she read the message but didn't respond further suggested she didn't care much about my absence. I immediately started looking for a place where Max and I could live, ready to make a fresh start. Kathy introduced me to a lawyer she knew, who always seemed a bit too pleased to be involved. She attended every meeting with the lawyer, providing valuable information. As I listened to Kathy's insights, my feelings for Ben grew colder. He had been involved with a young part-time worker at the store, which had caused him to be shuffled around different locations. No wonder he never progressed beyond being a store manager. I felt embarrassed by how naively I had lived up until then. Though I handled all communication with Ben through the lawyer, Christina was still a concern for me. Was she really wanting to come with me? I wanted to see her face and talk. When I went back to pick up the rest of my things and found her at home, I tried to reach out. "Christina, won't you come with me?" Christina continued to lounge on the sofa, not even looking at me. "Are you angry that I divorced him on my own?" I nearly cried asking this to Christina, who was silent. Then she started shaking her shoulders. Was she crying? "Let's go together." I couldn't just leave my own daughter. Before marrying Ben, she had already suffered from not having her father around. Surely, being with me, rather than with a stepfather not related by blood, would be happier for her. I tried to take her hand when she finally spoke. "Why are you so self-absorbed?" I thought she had tears in her eyes, but then she burst into laughter. "You really didn't know anything, did you?" She spoke as if pitying me. Christina knew about Ben's affairs. In exchange for keeping quiet, he had been giving her a generous allowance and lots of clothes. He's already found someone else to marry. During the divorce, Ben had continued to see other women. That's why things had progressed so smoothly. Are you okay with that? What was really in Christina's heart? I was worried about her future. But without regard to my concerns, Christina smiled confidently. The woman Dad's marrying is young and kind, like a big sister. She had already met the new woman who would become her stepmother. They had even gone shopping for clothes together, and they planned to buy a small dog. I'm sick of the noisy sewing machine and that dirty mutt. She knew exactly how much those words would hurt me. She twisted the knife further. I'm about to graduate, and as long as I have money, I can live on my own, so just send support. Despite not having her future planned out yet, how delusional was she? Where did I go wrong raising you? I'll leave the custody to him, so if you want money, ask your father. I spoke coldly, as if I had lost all maternal love. Christina's face showed no sign of hurt from my words. With that, I never stepped foot in that house again. I never knew I could be so cold. Although I'm sure I loved Christina, why didn't I force her to come with me? That's something I still regret. 5 years have passed since then. Ben was fired from his job, and he and Christina live a modest life together. During the divorce, he signed a pledge never to involve me again, so currently there is no harm to me. Christina, after graduating, has been job hopping while supporting Ben. If she ever reached out to me, I would undoubtedly offer help, but that seems unlikely. Sandra, you've stopped working again. Kathy called out, bringing me back from my reverie. Since then, I've been officially working for Kathy. Since I started managing her office, Kathy has become more active, and her business has grown. We've even moved to a larger office space that has a work area for me and a relaxing spot for Max. I know you don't have kids, but you're thinking about taking Christina back, aren't you? Kathy asked while making coffee. She really knew me well. I once asked a lawyer to try to regain custody of Christina. But after hearing a voice recording of the lawyer's visit to her, I hesitated. If you get rid of that sewing machine and the mutt, it's fine. That was when I realized I couldn't give up my sewing machine and Max for Christina. I abandoned my daughter. For my dreams. For my beliefs. Kathy said nothing, just handed me a freshly brewed coffee. Thank you. We drank our coffee and returned to work. Hoping that someday, Christina would appreciate the quality of these remade clothes, I continued to operate my sewing machine.